The morning air smelled like cut grass and wet asphalt, that weird mix you only get after a rainstorm rolls through, when everything should feel calm and settled. But I'll tell you right now, calm was the last thing running through my veins that morning. Picture this. I'm standing there at the edge of my driveway, holding my coffee, still in my slippers, just staring at what used to be my mailbox. Now, that thing's leaning like a boxer who lost a fight, metal all twisted, the side caved in. Yeah, it looked like it had gotten into a wrestling match and the mailbox lost, big time. I hadn't even gotten halfway through my first sip when I saw him. Little Tommy Hawkins, all 9 years old, and already the neighborhood menace, skipping down the street with this smug little grin. Like he just solved world peace or set something on fire and was hoping nobody'd notice. And trailing after him, right on cue, is his mom, Mrs. Karen Hawkins, the HOA's self-appointed moral police. Walking with that look on her face like she just caught me jaywalking in church. I called out to Tommy, trying to keep my voice steady. But let's be honest, I was more tense than I wanted to admit. Tommy, you realize what you just did? He barely stopped, just shrugged, twirling a stick like he was auditioning for a circus. It was an accident, he says, not a hint of guilt, just that nonchalant kid energy. And right then, I wished I had some kind of manual on how to talk sense into kids, or a time machine to warn myself about cul-de-sac living. An accident? Huh, I repeated, probably louder than I meant to. That accident just destroyed the only mailbox I've ever had in this house. Just then, Mrs. Hawkins materialized at her front door, arms crossed, lips pursed. Her nails painted some expensive shade of judgment. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice that perfect blend of fake calm and brewing storm that only HOA board members seem to master. "Yes, actually," I said, pointing at the battered mailbox. "Your son broke my mailbox." Was going to have to Google later. "Children will be children," she said, sickly sweet but cold as ice underneath. Maybe he just needed to burn off some energy. I took a long, slow breath, trying not to lose it. Remembering the HOA handbook said something about property damage, but right then, all I wanted to do was ask her if energy could bend steel and splinter wood, or if her kid was secretly Superman. She shot me a look like I'd just insulted 3 generations of her ancestors. Meanwhile, Tommy was off in his own world, kicking at a pebble, eyes full of mischief. Right then, I knew this wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't just a broken mailbox. This was war, suburban, passive-aggressive, caffeine-fueled HOA war. I bent down to check the damage, my mind already racing through worst-case scenarios, insurance deductibles, repair costs, and then I noticed Tommy's backpack. Unzipped, just enough for me to see a baseball poking out. Yeah, the kind of ball that breaks mailboxes, windows, and the fragile egos of grown adults who just want to read their mail in peace. That was when the whole mood shifted. The air got heavy, that sharp, static feeling before a storm. I could already see it. A week from now, I'd be sitting in the HOA meeting, and this would be the headline drama. And sure enough, that next HOA meeting felt like stepping into a gladiator ring. Except instead of lions, there were folding chairs and coffee-stained agendas. I showed up early, trying to look casual, but my eyes immediately locked on Karen sitting at the front table, posture so stiff it screamed, "I own this block." Tommy was with her, doing his best impression of a saint, but I wasn't buying it for a second. The room hummed with that fake friendly small talk, neighbors nodding, pretending they cared about each other's landscaping complaints. I picked a seat with a clear shot at both the microphone and Karen's laser stare. When it was finally my turn, I stood, fixed my shirt, and let the silence stretch just enough for people to really notice. "Good evening," I started, voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. "I'm here to address a minor property incident." Karen's head snapped up so fast I thought she might sprain her neck. Tommy fiddled with his pen, already looking like he knew he'd been caught. "My mailbox was damaged by her son during playtime in the cul-de-sac," I said, not breaking eye contact. You could feel the shift. People straightened up, murmured, glanced around. Karen's smile froze, tight and brittle. "Children are children," she said, that same syrupy tone. "We all need to forgive minor accidents." I shook my head, letting the suspense build. Minor accidents don't usually bend steel or break wood. And honestly, I think accountability starts at home. I looked right at Tommy. We're all adults here. I think the person responsible should. Excuse me. Karen shot up from her chair, voice sharp as attack. We do not publicly shame children in this HOA. That's inappropriate and uncalled for. The room tensed. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting for someone to step over that invisible line between neighborly and full-on Jerry Springer. I leaned in, voice lower now, but clear. It's not about public shaming. It's about teaching. Accountability. I watched Tommy squirm under all those eyes. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight. Karen's jaw was clenched so tight, I thought she might crack a tooth. You could see her trying to figure out how to spin this, protect her son, protect her status, and not look like the villain. Then, out of nowhere, Karen leans into the mic with this calculated sweetness. Perhaps we should hear both sides before passing judgment. Her voice was silk over steel. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a mailbox anymore. This was about power, about control, about a neighborhood drama. That'd get retold at every block party for years. But I wasn't backing down. The whole room was watching. Karen, Tommy, and every neighbor with a grudge or a grumble about how the HOA ran things. Wouldn't you say? Tommy shrank back, color draining from his face. Karen hissed something at him under her breath, but the tide had turned. I could feel it. It's not about shaming you, Tommy, I said, walking over, keeping my tone level. But sometimes, the world does notice mistakes. And facing them is how confidence gets built, or broken. The room was dead silent. Some folks nodded, finally looking less like the king of the cul-de-sac and more like a kid who'd gone a little too far. That's when I knew this fortress of entitlement finally had a crack. Karen tried to regroup, clearing her throat, voice shaky. Well, perhaps we can agree to repair what was damaged and move on. I just looked at Tommy. Move on, sure, but I think there's a bigger lesson here about honesty, responsibility, and maybe a little humility. Nobody said a word. Everyone knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, the air felt different, charged, like even the birds were waiting to see who'd flinch first. I stepped outside, bracing for another round, but instead of Karen glowering at me, I saw Tommy sitting on the curb, spinning a skateboard wheel, not meeting my eye. Karen came out, moving slow, deliberate, like she was walking into a courtroom, not her own front yard. We need to discuss reparations, she said, clipped and cold, and maybe how we handle conflict going forward. I nodded, fighting the grin. I agree. Honest reflection helps. For everyone. She froze, probably not expecting me to toss that back at her. Tommy looked up, eyes wide, then mumbled, I'm sorry about the mailbox. It wasn't much, but there was weight behind it. The weight of a kid who'd finally felt a consequence that mattered. Karen's jaw clenched again, her pride nearly swallowing her whole while the neighbors peeked out behind curtains, pretending they weren't watching. I crouched down, eye level with Tommy. You know, confidence isn't about never screwing up. It's about owning your mess, even when everybody's watching. He nodded, shy but stronger now. I get it. Karen cleared her throat, brittle as winter. Well, I suppose that's a good lesson for all of us. She turned away, stiff as ever, but you could see it. Something had changed. Neighbors were buzzing, some with little smiles, others shaking their heads, but everyone got the message. The playground of petty HOA disputes just got a new set of rules, or at least a new sheriff. As I walked back to my driveway, sun hitting the new coat of paint on that upright mailbox, I felt a weird satisfaction. Not just because it was fixed, but because, for once, honesty and a bit of backbone had actually won. Tommy rolled past on his skateboard, slower this time. Eyes thoughtful. Karen watched from the porch, expression unreadable, probably already planning her next neighborhood crusade. But I knew this wasn't the end, not in a place like this. It never is. But for now, the scales were balanced, the air was calm, and my mailbox stood tall, like a little victory planted right at the edge of my world. So what about you? Ever squared off with a neighbor who thought they were untouchable? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear about your battles, your small wins, your epic HOA showdowns. Because in the end, justice isn't always about the big stuff. It's those little moments when you stand your ground and the world takes notice. Hit that like button if you know what I mean. And let's keep this fight for fairness rolling, one mailbox a day. Time.